Fear has a specific sound. It isn't always a scream. It isn't always a siren. Sometimes, fear is the silence that follows a noise that doesn't belong. Imagine you are standing in a place you know. A place you've walked 100 times. Maybe you're buying shoes. Maybe you're just crossing the street to catch a bus. The rhythm of the city is a comfort. It's a promise that today is going to be just like yesterday. And then, that promise is broken. On a Tuesday afternoon, just days ago, that rhythm shattered in Portland, Oregon. 2 police officers, people trained to run toward danger, were conducting a routine stop. It was the kind of interaction that happens thousands of times a day in this country. A conversation, a check. But the man they were speaking to wasn't operating in the same reality as you or I. He wasn't looking for a conversation. He was looking for an exit. And he was willing to burn the world down to find it. In the span of 3 seconds, 2 officers lay wounded on the pavement. And the man simply evaporated. He didn't speed away in a getaway car. He didn't hijack a vehicle. He stepped back into the crowd. He walked into the grey mist of the Pacific Northwest and vanished. For the next few days, an entire city held its breath. Schools locked their doors. Families cancelled dinner plans. Every shadow in the Lloyd district looked like a gunman. But this isn't just a story about a shooting. It's a story about what happens when a community decides it's had enough. The police didn't solve this case alone. The technology didn't solve this case alone, you did. This is the story of the 230 tips that hunted a ghost. This is the story of the capture of Eric Oelkers. And we have to ask the question, when a man decides to declare war on a city, what breaks inside him first? And if you were the one watching him walk past your window, would you have made the call? To understand the fear, we have to understand the place, the Lloyd Center. For decades, it was the beating heart of Portland's East Side. It's where teenagers went on first dates. It's where families went Christmas shopping. But like many places in America, the last few years have been complicated. The shine has worn off. The shadows have grown a little longer. But it is still a hub. It is still a place where life happens. Surrounding this concrete island are neighborhoods, real homes. Places with porch lights and garden gnomes and tricycles in the driveway. Sullivan's Gulch, Irvington. These aren't crime scenes. They are sanctuaries. On January 22nd, the people living here were worried about mundane things. The grocery bill, the rain forecast, the traffic on I-84. And in the middle of this ordinary Tuesday, 2 officers from the Portland Police Bureau were doing a job that is often invisible until it goes wrong. They were patrolling. Keeping watch. We often talk about the thin blue line, but psychologically, for the officers, it's not a line. It's a series of moments. Hundreds of faces, hundreds of judgments. Is this person okay? Is that person a threat? Psychologists call this hypervigilance. The brain is constantly scanning for danger. It's exhausting. It drains the adrenal glands. But on this day, the threat wouldn't register until it was too late. The man they spotted wasn't screaming. He wasn't brandishing a weapon openly. He was just there. Eric Oelkers, 41 years old. What does a man like this look like to you? He doesn't look like a monster in a movie. He looks like a man you might stand behind in line at a convenience store. But inside, the wiring was fraying. We know now that Oelkers had a history of friction with the law, a history of not fitting into the boxes society provides. When you look at his history, you see a pattern of antisocial personality traits. This isn't just being shy. This is a fundamental disconnection from the rights of others. To a mind like this, authority figures, police officers, aren't people, they are obstacles. They are objects in the way of his freedom. And when an object is in your way, you don't negotiate with it. You remove it. The officers approached. Maybe they saw something suspicious. Maybe they recognized him. We don't know the exact words exchanged in those first few seconds. Can I talk to you for a second? Hey, hold on. Let's slow down those 3 seconds. In the field of forensic psychology, we look for the pre-attack indicators. Often, these are subtle: a tightening of the jaw, a weight shift, the target glance where the perpetrator looks for an escape route or eyes the officer's holster. Oelkers, according to early reports, exhibited a terrifying level of affective coldness. This wasn't a crime of passion, it was a crime of preservation. When an individual has spent years on the fringes of the law, the police represent more than just law enforcement, they represent the end of the line. For Oelkers, that routine stop was likely interpreted as the final moment of his freedom. When the brain perceives a terminal threat, it enters a state of prefrontal cortex override. Logic vanishes, survival takes over. In those 3 seconds, he didn't see human beings with families. He saw the walls of a cell closing in. He drew a weapon that he shouldn't have had, and he fired. The first officer was hit before his hand even touched his own holster. The second officer, reacting with the speed of years of training, was still caught in the transition between conversation and combat. Both went down. In the psychology of violence, there is a concept called the ODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. Police are trained to master this loop. But criminals have a distinct advantage. They know they are going to attack before the officer does. They have the element of surprise. Oelkers didn't hesitate. He didn't debate. He pulled the trigger and immediately transitioned into his escape. The sound of gunfire in an urban canyon is terrifying. It echoes. It bounces off the concrete walls of the Lloyd Center. It sounds like it's coming from everywhere at once. One officer goes down, then the second. Pain, confusion. The radio screams to life. Within minutes, the area is flooded. Sirens wail from every precinct. The cavalry is coming. But in those crucial minutes, those 120 seconds of absolute chaos, Eric Oelkers makes a move that defines this entire case. He doesn't fight to the death. He doesn't take hostages. He runs. And he doesn't just run. He disappears. He sheds the scene like a snake sheds its skin. He moves away from the flashing lights, away from the screaming sirens. He moves into the quiet. This is where the terror shifts. When the shooting stops, the adrenaline crash hits the city. The police set up a perimeter. They lock down the mall, they close the highway. But they can't find him. Consider the psychology of the manhunt from the public's perspective. You are sitting in your living room in Irvington. You hear the sirens, you check your phone. The alert comes through. Shooting suspect at large. Armed and dangerous. Shelter in place. Shelter in place. Those 3 words change the chemistry of your home. Suddenly, your front door doesn't feel thick enough. The window you usually leave cracked open for fresh air. You slam it shut, you lock it. You look at your backyard, the bushes where your kids play, and you wonder, is he in there? As night fell on Portland, the city entered a state of siege. The police had a description: white male, heavyset, dark clothing. But that describes 1,000 men. The detectives are working against the clock. The golden hour, the first hour after a crime, has passed. The trail is getting cold. But they have one advantage. They have the image. They release the photo. And this is the moment the dynamic shifts. Usually, a criminal relies on anonymity. He relies on the fact that people don't pay attention. He relies on the bystander effect, the idea that someone else will deal with it. But Oelkers had shot 2 police officers. He had broken the social contract in the most violent way possible. He wasn't just hiding from the police anymore. He was hiding from everyone. To understand how Oelkers was caught, we have to look into the tip room. This isn't what you see in movies. One detective sitting by a phone. This is a digital and human sieve. Every time a major crime like this occurs, a tip line is established. In this case, over 230 tips flooded in within 72 hours. Think about the logistics of that. Every tip must be vetted. Asterisk level 1, the filtering. Analysts look for high probability leads. A person who says, I saw a guy in a hoodie 20 miles away is a level 3. A person who says, my brother-in-law, Eric Oelkers, just showed up at my door with a bleeding hand is a level 1. Asterisk. Level 2, the digital footprint. While the public is calling, the FBI's cyber task force is working the shadow search. They are looking at Oelkers' last known pings, his social media history, and any digital breadcrumbs. Asterisk level 3, the canvas. Detectives go door to door in the Lloyd district. They aren't just looking for Oelkers, they are looking for disruptions. A missing bike. A broken shed lock. A dog that won't stop barking in a specific direction. Let's talk about the psychology of the tip. Why do people call? Some do it for justice. Some do it for attention. But in a case like this, most people do it out of a primal need for safety. Restoring order. When a predator is loose in the village, the tribe unites. It's an evolutionary response. We share information to survive. By Wednesday morning, the trickle became a flood. The FBI was involved, the US Marshals. And the tips weren't just random guesses. The community was building a profile. They were tracking his movements backward and forward in time. While the city was hunting him, what was happening inside Oelkers' mind? Clinical studies of fugitives suggest a rapid personality disintegration. For the first 24 hours, the suspect is often in a state of tactical clarity. They are focused on basic survival, finding water, avoiding light, staying moving. But by hour 48, sleep deprivation begins to take its toll. The cognitive load of being a fugitive is immense. You have to remember every lie you've told. You have to anticipate every corner you turn. You start to see police officers where there are only trees. You start to hear sirens in the sound of the wind. For Oelkers, this was likely exacerbated by the weather. Portland in late January is not a place for the homeless or the hidden. It is cold, it is wet, and it is unforgiving. He was trapped between the elements and the law. This creates a state of hyperarousal. His brain was constantly flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. In this state, a person makes mistakes. They get tired, they stop moving. They return to places they find comforting, even if those places are exactly where the police are looking. He didn't flee to another state. He didn't have a sophisticated network of safe houses. He was a man with a gun and a history, trying to outrun a digital age. Every doorbell camera he passed was a witness. Every smartphone in every pocket was a potential snitch. The world had become a panopticon, and Oelkers was the only one on the stage. On January 26, 2026, the silence in Portland's residential periphery didn't just break, it shattered. The tip had been precise. It wasn't just, "I saw a guy." It was, "There is a man in the back of this property. He's been there too long. He doesn't belong." When the call came in, the command center didn't hesitate. They had been processing hundreds of dead ends for days. But this one had the weight of truth. The tactical teams, men from the FBI, the US Marshals, and local SERT teams, began what is known as a slow is smooth approach. Psychologically, the police were playing a game of chess with a man who was already checkmated but didn't know it yet. They knew that if they rushed in with sirens blaring, they risked another shooting. They had to assume Eric Oelkers was still armed. They had to assume he was ready to finish what he started at the Lloyd Center. Think about the mindset of the officers in that moment. 2 of their brothers-in-arms are in hospital beds. The man responsible is potentially 50 feet away, behind a wooden door. The urge to kick that door down is visceral. It's human. But the quiet crime approach to justice isn't about vengeance. It's about precision. The tactical commander's goal was to drain Oelkers' options until the only thing left was surrender. The loudspeakers cut through the morning air. "Eric Oelkers, this is the Portland police. We have the house surrounded. Come out with your hands empty." Inside, Oelkers was facing the endgame psychosis. For 4 days, he had lived in a tunnel of his own making. No sleep, high adrenaline. The world was shrinking. When the voice came over the megaphone, the tunnel collapsed. Reports from the scene describe a moment of agonizing tension. Minutes felt like hours. Neighbors were told to stay away from windows. Then, the door creaked open. He didn't go out in a blaze of glory. He didn't make a speech. He stepped out, blinking into the light, and was forced to the ground. The handcuffs clicked into place. The ghost of the Lloyd Center was finally just a man in custody. While Oelkers was being processed into the Multnomah County Jail, another story was unfolding in the hospital. This is the part of true crime we often skip, the long recovery. When an officer is shot, the trauma isn't just physical. It is an ontological shock. These officers go to work every day believing that their training and their uniform provide a certain level of protection. When that is pierced, the psyche must rebuild its sense of safety from scratch. One officer, hit in the lower extremities, faced the immediate terror of blood loss. The other, hit in the torso, was saved by his vest but still suffered significant internal trauma from the kinetic energy of the round. But consider the psychological scars. For the rest of their lives, a routine traffic stop will never be routine again. The quiet crime angle reminds us that justice isn't just a verdict in a courtroom. It's a physical therapist helping a man learn to walk again. It's a police chaplain sitting with a family that almost lost everything. The community, too, is a victim. The Lloyd Center district, already struggling with its reputation, must now heal from the stigma of being a shooting site. How many people stayed home that weekend? How many businesses lost revenue because of one man's decision to pull a trigger? We must count these losses if we are to understand the true cost of the crime. Eric Oelkers is now a resident of the justice system. For the next several months, the quiet will settle over his case as the lawyers take over. He faces attempted murder, assault in the first degree, and unlawful use of a weapon. Because the victims were law enforcement, he faces enhanced sentencing. His defense will likely look into his past. Was there a mental health crisis? Was he under the influence? While these don't excuse the act, they help us understand the why. In a quiet crime documentary, we don't look for excuses, we look for patterns. If we can identify the moment Oelkers began to slip through the cracks of society, perhaps we can prevent the next Oelkers from picking up a gun. The 230 tips are now being converted into evidence. Every person who called in will likely be interviewed by the district attorney's office. The community's involvement didn't end with the arrest. It is just moving into a formal phase. The arrest was just the beginning of the resolution phase. In the immediate aftermath, the city felt a collective exhale. But for the two officers, the victims of that initial, senseless spark of violence, the road back is long. One officer was released from the hospital within 48 hours. The other remains in serious condition, facing a journey of surgeries and physical therapy that will last years. We talk about the case being over when the handcuffs click. But for the survivors, the case never ends. They will replay those 3 seconds at the Lloyd Center every time they hear a car backfire or a loud shout in a crowded place. But there is a silver lining here. In a time where we are told that cities are divided, that neighbors don't know each other, and that the police and the public are at odds, something different happened in Portland this week. 230, that's not just a number. That's 230 people who stopped what they were doing, looked at a photo of a dangerous man, and decided to get involved. Psychologists call this collective efficacy. It's the ability of a community to maintain order. When Oelkers pulled that trigger, he thought he was attacking 2 individuals. He didn't realize he was attacking the collective efficacy of an entire city. The school children are back on the playgrounds. The shoppers are back at the Lloyd Center. The rain continues to fall in the Pacific Northwest, washing away the chalk outlines and the yellow tape, but the memory remains. We started this story with a question about the sound of fear. We asked if you would have made the call. The reality is, most of those 230 tips were probably wrong, people seeing shadows. People seeing men who just happened to have the same jacket. But among the 229 mistakes was the one truth that saved lives. What broke in Eric Oelkers? Perhaps we'll never fully know. A mix of history, isolation, and a sudden, violent impulse. But what healed in Portland was the realization that the community is the ultimate safeguard. The next time you walk down a street you know well, look around. Not with fear, but with awareness. The quiet in our stories isn't the absence of noise, it's the presence of peace. And that peace is something we all protect together. 2 officers are recovering. 1 man is behind bars. And a city is whole again. Until the next time the rhythm breaks. Stay safe, stay observant, and thank you for watching Quiet Crime Stories.